When my boy passed away, it felt like the whole universe had reached down and stripped every last good thing out of my life. I truly believe there was nothing left for me after that. 4 days after we stood together and scattered his ashes into the wind, his best friend called me out of the blue. His voice was tight, shaky. He said, "Mr. Fontaine." Then he let out a rough little snort like he was trying not to lose it. "I found a USB drive hidden in Michael's workshop. You need to see what is on it. And please, do not tell Christine anything. I think she knows I have it." The second he said that, my heart just about stopped beating in my chest. I could barely breathe. What in the world could my son have kept hidden from his own wife? That question stuck to me like a shadow. But nothing could have prepared me for what I felt when I drove to Calgary and sat there watching those files load up on a computer screen. As the folders opened one by one, a cold numbness spread through my body. I did not shiver. I did not cry. I just went completely still. The son I had raised, the boy I thought I knew inside and out, had known he was in danger. And somehow, he had left behind exactly what I would need to prove it. Before I go any further, let me say this plainly. If you are listening, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from. It truly helps more than you might think. Michael's memorial service was held in a small chapel that overlooked the Bow River. It was peaceful there, almost too peaceful. My wife, Elaine, had died 3 years earlier after a long fight with cancer. And now our only child, our son Michael, was gone at 41 years old. That is what they told us. A brain aneurysm. They said he collapsed during his morning workout down in the basement gym. Christine, his wife, found him when she came home from her yoga class. She stood at the front of that chapel that day, greeting people and accepting their condolences like someone trained for it. She wore a simple black dress and a string of pearls that looked expensive but not flashy. She cried, yes, but just enough. Enough to seem heartbroken, not enough to smear her makeup. Christine had always been beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made you stop looking any further, the kind that distracted you from asking harder questions. At one point, a young man approached her. He looked to be around 35, maybe a little older. His suit fit him too perfectly for a funeral guest, tailored in a way that caught my attention. They spoke quietly. I could not hear a word. He reached out and touched her elbow, just for a moment. She smiled at him. And it was not the smile of a grieving widow. It was something else. Something familiar. Something shared between them. Then he slipped out through a side door without offering condolences to anyone else. Christine noticed me watching. She walked over and took my hands in hers. "Dad," she said, "why do you not stay at our place tonight? I cannot stand the idea of you driving all the way back to Victoria by yourself." I had never liked her calling me Dad. I put up with it for Michael's sake, but it never felt right. I told her I would be fine, that I had already booked a hotel room downtown. She squeezed my hands tighter. "You should not be alone right now. We are family." The word family did not sit well coming from her. It sounded forced, like a line rehearsed in front of a mirror. Still, I nodded and told her I would think about it. Then I watched her drift away, greeting more mourners with that same careful grace. What she did not know was that I could not stop thinking about a phone call Michael had made to me 11 days before he died. It was close to midnight when he called, which was not like him at all. My son believed in routine. He guarded his sleep like it was sacred. "Dad, I need to ask you something," he said. "Sure," I told him. "If anything ever happened to me, would you promise to look after things? Make sure everything is handled the right way." I laughed. I actually laughed. "You are 41 years old. Nothing is going to happen to you. Just promise me." There was something in his voice that night. Maybe fear. Maybe a kind of acceptance. It made the hair on my arms stand up. "I promise," I said. "But Michael, what is going on? I cannot talk about it now. I will explain everything when I see you at Christmas." Christmas was only 3 weeks away. He never made it to Christmas. That night in the hotel, the room felt less like a place to rest and more like a prison cell. I sat by the window and stared out at the city lights, watching them blur through tears I could not seem to stop. I thought about the little boy who used to help me build birdhouses in the garage. The young man who called me every single Sunday evening without fail. And the grown man who had been afraid of something big enough to shake him, and had not told me what it was. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text message from a number I did not recognize. "Mr. Fontaine, this is Daniel Okonkwo, Michael's friend from university. I was his business partner at the firm. I need to speak with you urgently. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Please do not mention this to Christine." Daniel. I remembered the name. Michael had talked about him many times. 5 years earlier, the two of them had started an engineering consulting firm together. They specialized in environmental assessments for mining operations. Michael respected him. Trusted him. I wrote back asking where and what time. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Kensington, far enough away that Christine would not just happen to walk in. Daniel was tall, with gentle eyes that did not match how nervous he seemed. His hands would not stay still. He kept adjusting his coffee cup, straightening his napkin, picking up and putting down his phone. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Fontaine," he said. "Call me Robert," I told him. He nodded, but he never once used my name. "I found something 3 days ago," he said quietly. "Last year, Michael gave me a key to his workshop. He told me I could use his tools whenever I needed them. After the service, I went there. I do not know, maybe just to feel close to him." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. This was hidden inside a hollowed-out book on his shelf. To Kill a Mockingbird. It was his favorite. My throat tightened. "What is on it?" Daniel's expression changed. The kindness in his eyes turned heavy. "Everything," he said. Daniel looked me straight in the eye and said Michael had saved everything. Bank records. Electronic mail messages. Photographs. Audio recordings. My son had kept track of it all like he was building a case. He opened his laptop, slid the USB drive into the port, and waited while the screen filled up with folders. There were so many of them it made my head spin. One by one, he clicked through the files. The more I saw, the harder it became to keep my hands steady. For the past 18 months, Christine had been quietly emptying their joint bank accounts. She had done it carefully, almost professionally. The transfers were disguised as business expenses, charitable contributions, and payments to vendors that did not even exist. When Daniel totaled it all up, the number came out to more than $800,000. Every dollar had been routed into an account under the name Bradley Weston. "Who is Bradley Weston?" I asked, even though deep down I already knew the answer. Daniel did not say a word at first. He simply opened a photograph. It was the same man I had seen at the funeral. The one wearing that perfectly tailored suit. The one who had shared that quiet, knowing smile with my daughter-in-law. Christine's personal trainer. "They have been involved for almost 4 years," Daniel said. The pictures left no room for doubt. Christine and Bradley sitting close together at restaurants. Checking into hotels. Walking hand in hand along beaches I did not recognize. Each image carried a date and time stamp. Many of them were taken while Michael was traveling for work, believing his wife was at home waiting for him. But even that betrayal was not the worst part. Daniel opened another file. It was a letter. My son had written it 2 weeks before he died. "Dad," it began. "If you are reading this, something has happened to me, and I need you to know the truth." My chest tightened as I read on. He had discovered the affair 8 months earlier. He had hired a private investigator. He had gathered proof. He had even met with a divorce attorney. His plan had been to confront Christine after the holidays, file for divorce, and protect whatever assets he could salvage. Then everything changed. 3 weeks before his death, Christine somehow found out that he knew. Michael did not know how. Maybe she saw something on his computer. Maybe Bradley slipped up and told her. After that, he wrote that she had started acting differently. Watching him. Asking odd questions about his health, his exercise routine, the supplements he was taking. She had begun pushing him to increase his life insurance coverage. She kept saying that anything could happen and they needed to be prepared. The week before he died, she suggested he had additional coverage for accidental death. 2 days before his death, Michael changed the beneficiary on his life insurance policy to me. Christine had not been told. In the letter, he admitted he might be imagining things. He said he hoped he was wrong. But if something happened to him that looked natural or accidental, he begged me not to accept it without question. He reminded me that I had spent 30 years investigating cases for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. He told me I knew how to uncover the truth. He ended the letter by telling me he loved me. He apologized for not telling me sooner. He said he had been ashamed and believed he could manage the situation on his own. He signed it. Your son, Michael. I read that letter 4 times in a row. My boy. Strong. Capable. Proud. And all that time he had been living in fear, carrying it alone, and I had not seen it. Across from me, Daniel sat there with tears running down his face. I should have realized something was wrong, he said quietly. He seemed under pressure the last few months. I thought it was just work stress. I never imagined it was this. I checked the date on the letter. November 28th. Michael died on December 9th. That same afternoon, I drove straight to the Calgary Police Service headquarters. I carried the USB drive and every document Daniel had handed me. I was not leaving anything behind. They sent me to speak with Detective Sarah Chin. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp, observant eyes and a calm, patient way of listening. I laid everything out for her. The financial transfers. The affair. The letter. All of it. When I finished, she folded her hands on her desk. Mr. Fontaine, she said carefully, I understand why you are concerned. But your son's death was examined thoroughly. The medical examiner found no signs of trauma and no evidence of foul play. Brain aneurysms can occur suddenly, even in individuals who appear completely healthy. My son was healthy, I said. He ran marathons. He had a full physical examination 6 months ago. The results were perfect. There is no history of aneurysms in our family. Not on my side. Not on his mother's. She nodded slightly. Sometimes these conditions develop without warning. I leaned forward. Detective Chin, my son wrote a letter saying he feared for his life. His wife was stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from him. She was involved with another man. She was pressuring him to increase his life insurance coverage. And 12 days after writing that letter, he was dead. She picked up the documents again and studied them more closely. This material suggests financial misconduct and infidelity, she said slowly. Detective Chin looked at me with something close to sympathy and said the evidence was troubling, yes, but it still did not prove murder. Unless there was clear proof showing how someone could have caused a brain aneurysm. Her hands were tied. She spread her palms in a quiet, apologetic gesture. I walked out of that station knowing one hard truth. No one was going to fight this battle for me. Not yet. Not without something undeniable. But I was not just some grieving old man chasing shadows. I had spent 32 years serving with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The last 20 of those years were in forensic investigation. I had worked crime scenes from Vancouver all the way to Newfoundland. I had testified in courtrooms more times than I could count. I had helped convict killers who believed they had committed flawless crimes. If anyone could uncover what really happened to my son, it was me. That evening, I went back to Christine's house. I accepted her invitation to stay in the guest room. And from that moment on, I stepped into a role I never imagined I would have to play. I became the grieving, unsuspecting father. The man who suspected nothing. Over dinner, Christine smiled softly and said, "Thank you for being here, Dad." She had cooked Michael's favorite meal: roast chicken with rosemary potatoes. I could not decide whether that was heartfelt or deeply disturbing. "It helps to have family close," she added. "We need to lean on each other," I replied, though the words felt rough and heavy in my throat. "That is what Michael would have wanted." She nodded and pressed a napkin to her eyes. "He loved you so much. He always said you taught him everything about being a man. About integrity." I watched her as she spoke. Every motion seemed deliberate. Every tear appeared right on cue. It was like watching a performance crafted for an audience. During the next week, I paid attention to everything. She left the house every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoon. She claimed she was visiting friends or attending grief counseling sessions. On Wednesday, I followed her. She drove to a condominium complex in Mount Royal. I watched her park, step out, and walk straight into Unit 412. From a position outside where I could see through a window, I spotted her in Bradley Weston's arms. They were not even trying to hide it anymore. I documented everything: license plate numbers, dates, times, photographs of them together through half-open blinds. I gathered evidence piece by piece, the way I had done my entire career. At night, when Christine was asleep, I searched the house carefully. Michael's home office had been stripped clean. His computer had been wiped. Paper files were gone, shredded beyond recovery. But she was not as meticulous as she believed. Behind the furnace in the basement, I discovered a small plastic bag containing 2 prescription bottles. The labels had been peeled off, but one of the bottles still had a trace of residue inside. I collected a sample the same way I had been trained decades ago, methodical and precise. In the glove compartment of her car, tucked beneath the owner's manual, I found pharmacy receipts from Red Deer, more than 90 kilometers away. The purchases had been made with cash. The dates matched the weeks leading up to Michael's death. One item stood out: potassium chloride solution. Medical grade. High concentration. My mind began connecting the pieces automatically. Potassium chloride, if administered through an intravenous line, can trigger cardiac arrest. In some situations, it could be mistaken for natural causes, including complications from an aneurysm. If delivered while someone was asleep or otherwise unable to resist, it might leave very little trace unless investigators specifically looked for it. Michael exercised in the basement every morning at 5:30. Christine always claimed she was still asleep at that hour. But what if she was not? What if she had been awake, waiting? I needed the toxicology report. I needed to know exactly what had been tested and what had not. I called Daniel. He reached out to a friend he had at the medical examiner's office. The standard toxicology panel had not included potassium levels or any detailed analysis for injection sites. There had been no reason to suspect foul play at the time. But there was still a way to find out. As next of kin and executor of Michael's estate, I had the legal authority to request additional testing. Some tissue samples had been preserved before cremation. I contacted a private forensic laboratory in Toronto, explained the situation carefully, and arranged for further analysis. Then came the waiting. Waiting was the hardest part. It ate at me every hour of the day. I remained in Christine's house. I continued acting like a broken father trying to cope with loss. I kept watching her meet Bradley Weston while my son's ashes rested in an urn on the mantel. One evening, she brought me a cup of tea. "You have looked so exhausted lately, Dad," she said gently. "This herbal blend helps with sleep." I thanked her and lifted the cup to my lips, pretending to take a sip while she observed me closely. The moment she turned her back, I walked over to a potted plant and poured every drop into the soil. By the next morning, the plant I had poured that tea into was completely wilted. The leaves had turned dark and limp, like they had been burned from the inside out. That told me more than enough. 3 weeks after I sent the tissue samples to the private laboratory in Toronto, the results finally came in. I remember holding the envelope in my hands before opening it, already knowing my life was about to change again. The report confirmed elevated levels of potassium chloride far beyond what could occur naturally in the human body. It also documented microscopic evidence of an injection site and tissue taken from near Michael's left arm. There it was, in black and white. My son had not died from some random medical tragedy. He had been poisoned, murdered inside his own home by the woman who had once promised to love and honor him. I sat alone in my hotel room with that report trembling in my hands, and I cried. Not just because I missed my boy. I cried because I understood, finally, what he must have felt in those last weeks. The fear. The isolation. The awful betrayal of sharing a bed with someone who meant him harm. I called Detective Chen right away. This time, I brought everything with me. The bank statements showing the stolen money. The photographs of Christine and Bradley Weston together. The pharmacy receipts from Red Deer. The residue I had collected from the basement. Michael's letter. And most importantly, the toxicology report proving injection. Detective Chin went through each document slowly, her focus sharpening with every page. When she reached the laboratory findings, she stopped and looked up at me. Potassium chloride administered by injection, she said quietly. This is conclusive. Yes, I replied. She closed the folder with purpose. Mr. Fontaine, I am formally reopening your son's case as a homicide investigation. Everything you have gathered will be logged as evidence. I need you to continue acting as you have been while we build a case that cannot be challenged. How long? I asked. A few weeks, she said. We must coordinate with the Crown Prosecutor and secure warrants. Your son deserves justice done properly. Every part of me wanted immediate action. I wanted to confront Christine that very second and watch her face when she realized the truth had caught up with her. But 3 decades in law enforcement had taught me restraint. So I nodded. I could wait a little longer. 2 weeks later, I was back at her house. She believed we were meeting to discuss details about Michael's estate. In reality, my presence there was meant to keep her occupied while officers executed search warrants at her home, Bradley Weston's condominium, and the pharmacy in Red Deer. Christine served wine and arranged cheese on a platter like we were hosting guests instead of sitting in the aftermath of murder. She spoke casually about selling the house. Maybe relocating somewhere warmer. Michael always talked about traveling, she said softly. I think I will honor him by finally seeing the world. On his money, I thought. With the man who helped kill him. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Detective Chen. Warrant executed. Remaining potassium chloride recovered at Weston's condominium. Emails outlining the plan located. Both individuals being taken into custody. Almost immediately, Christine's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and stepped into the next room. I could hear her voice rise. What do you mean they are at Bradley's place? What are they looking for? When she returned, the calm mask she wore had cracked. The color had drained from her face. Dad, I need to handle something, she said quickly. Can we finish this discussion another time? Of course, I answered. Is everything all right? Yes. Just paperwork complications. She hurried me toward the door, practically pushing me outside. As I walked down the driveway toward my car, 2 unmarked police vehicles pulled up. Detective Chen stepped out of one. Christine Fontaine, you are under arrest for the murder of Michael Fontaine. You have the right to retain and instruct counsel. I stood there and watched them place handcuffs on her in the driveway of the house my son had purchased, furnished, and died in. As they guided her toward the vehicle, she looked at me. And for the first time since Michael's death, her expression was honest. Not grief. Not charm. Not performance. Pure fury. She understood then. The quiet father-in-law she had dismissed as a harmless old man had been watching all along. Bradley Weston was arrested at the same time in his condominium. Officers caught him attempting to destroy evidence. A search of his computer uncovered months of messages between him and Christine, detailing their plan step by step. They had researched poisons they believed would go undetected. They debated methods. They calculated precisely how much life insurance money they would receive. The trial began in September. I attended every single day. I sat in the front row where Christine could see me whenever she looked toward the gallery. The Crown prosecutor presented the case carefully and thoroughly. Security footage from the pharmacy showed Christine purchasing potassium chloride while wearing a disguise that did not hide her well enough. Emails between her and Bradley laid out their timeline and referred to the package. Forensic testimony confirmed the injection. Then Michael's letter was read aloud in court. You could hear the shift in the room. Several jurors wiped away tears. One woman requested a brief recess because she needed a moment to steady herself. Bradley Weston did not last long under pressure. Within days of his arrest, he accepted a plea agreement in exchange for testifying against Christine. On the stand, he described how she first brought up the idea 2 years into their affair. He admitted they had spent months planning. He said she practiced giving injections by pushing saline solution into oranges until she felt confident she could do it without waking Michael. She told me she deserved better, Bradley testified, never once looking at her. She said Michael was dull, that he did not value her. She said the insurance money would let us start over somewhere new. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Christine's lawyer tried hard to flip the story around. He stood there in court and argued that Bradley Weston had been the real architect of the crime. According to him, Christine was just a vulnerable woman pulled under the influence of a controlling lover. That might have sounded convincing if the facts were not so clear. The potassium chloride had been found in her possession. The pharmacy's security footage showed her face plainly enough. The electronic mail messages outlining the plan came directly from her own devices. The evidence did not leave much room for imagination. One of Michael's former colleagues took the stand and testified that she had once seen bruises on Christine. At the time, she assumed Michael had caused them. But when the defense questioned her more closely, she admitted something important. Christine had never actually said Michael hurt her. She had only hinted at it, planting the idea with carefully chosen words and vague suggestions. Then came testimony that hurt Christine far more. Her own sister told the court about a family dinner 2 years earlier. Christine had asked unusual questions about poisons that would be difficult to detect. When the family reacted with surprise, she laughed and claimed she was researching a novel she planned to write. There had never been any novel. On October 18th, after 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. I will never forget the silence in that courtroom. Guilty. First-degree murder. Guilty. Conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty. Fraud over $5,000. Christine's knees buckled. Court officers had to hold her upright as the verdict was read aloud. Bradley Weston, who had already accepted a 12-year sentence in exchange for testifying, watched from a separate room through closed-circuit television. The life he thought he would build somewhere warm had turned into a prison term and disgrace. 3 months later came sentencing. The judge imposed life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Christine would be 69 years old before she could even apply for release. Before handing down the sentence, the judge addressed her directly. "You betrayed a man who loved you and built a life with you," he said. "You planned his murder over many months, carried it out without hesitation, and demonstrated no remorse until you were exposed. The cold nature of your actions reflects the profound moral failure this court cannot ignore." Christine said nothing. She stared straight ahead, her face empty, as if her future had already turned into concrete walls and iron bars. The insurance company voided every claim as soon as criminal charges were filed. Christine received nothing. Bradley received nothing. Everything Michael had worked for, the engineering firm he built alongside Daniel, the investments he grew, the house he cared for, all of it went into a trust one created in his name. The Michael Fontaine Foundation was born out of that trust. Its purpose is simple. We provide legal and investigative guidance to families who believe their loved ones did not die by accident, but cannot get anyone in authority to listen. Daniel runs the daily operations from Calgary. In just 2 years, we have assisted 11 families. 8 of those cases were reopened. 5 resulted in arrests. After the trial ended, I went back home to Victoria. I returned to the house where Elaine and I raised Michael. That house holds every memory. It is where he took his first steps, where he spoke his first words, where he grew into a man I was proud to call my son. I have kept his childhood bedroom exactly as it was the day he left for university. Hockey posters still hang on the walls. His trophies sit on the shelf. The telescope we bought together when he was 12, back when he was fascinated by the stars, stands near the window. Sometimes I sit in that room and talk to him. I tell him about the foundation. I tell him about the families we have helped. I tell him that his death created something that serves a purpose, even though it never should have happened. Detective Chen still calls me from time to time. She has referred several families my way. People facing similar doubts and resistance. I review what they have gathered, show them how to document concerns properly, and connect them with resources they never knew were available. This is not the retirement Elaine and I once imagined. We had planned to travel the world together. We had dreamed about spoiling grandchildren who never came. Instead, I spend my days helping other parents and spouses search for answers. There is meaning in that work. There is purpose in knowing that each case represents someone's child, someone's parent, someone's brother or sister who deserves the truth. Just last month, I received a letter from a woman in Winnipeg. Her husband had been convicted of killing their daughter. Part of the evidence presented in court was gathered using methods she learned through our foundation's materials. Her daughter had been dead for 4 years before anyone accepted that it was not an accident. Now the man responsible will spend the rest of his life behind bars. In her letter, she thanked me. She wrote that knowing the truth did not bring her daughter back, but it gave her daughter's death meaning. And I believe that is what Michael would have wanted. Not revenge. Accountability. It was never about rage. It was about justice. It was about knowing other families would be shielded from the kind of nightmare mine walked through. It was about recognizing warning signs sooner. About making sure people who believed they had committed the perfect crime would one day answer for it. Tonight, I am sitting out on my back deck, watching the sun sink slowly into the Pacific Ocean. Across the water, I can see the mountains of Washington State rising against the horizon. The sky is painted in deep purple and soft gold as the light fades. Elaine used to stand right here beside me and admire this view. This is the same deck where Michael once knelt under a blanket of stars and asked Christine to marry him, believing he was stepping into a lifetime of happiness. The grief does not disappear. It never will. It sits inside me like an empty space carved out of my chest. That space used to be filled with Michael's Sunday evening phone calls, his surprise visits, his awful jokes that somehow still made me laugh. But now there is something else alongside that sorrow. It is not quite peace. It is not satisfaction either. It is quieter than that. It is the steady weight of a promise honored. The truth brought into the open. Justice carried through to the end. Christine will spend decades inside a prison cell. She will grow old there, knowing the father-in-law she brushed aside as harmless was the one who uncovered everything. Bradley Weston will walk out of prison someday in his late 40s. But he will leave behind his youth, his reputation, and any dream he once had of an easy life. Neither of them gained a single thing from what they did. The money they were willing to kill for now serves a purpose they never intended. Michael's legacy is not defined by how he died. It lives on through families protected, crimes revealed, and truths brought forward. That matters. It does not erase the hollow place in my heart, but it matters deeply. Michael, wherever you are, I hope you understand. I hope you know I kept my word. I hope you see that the secrets you feared would stay buried were pulled into the light instead. I hope you know your father loved you enough to use every skill he ever learned, every connection he ever made, and every remaining day of his life to make sure your death was not meaningless. That is what a father does. We guard our children, even when we could not shield them in time. We carry them forward. We make certain their lives count for something. And yours did, son. Your life mattered more than I can ever fully say. The foundation we created helps another family nearly every month. Each case is a step forward. A small measure of redemption. A continuation of the work you began the moment you documented Christine's betrayal and trusted me to find it. You were braver than you realized. Wise enough to preserve evidence. Faithful enough to believe your father would uncover the truth. I did, Michael. I found it all. And I will keep searching for others as long as I have strength left in these bones. When I no longer can, Daniel will carry it forward. So will the people we have trained. So will the families who have learned to stand up and demand answers. Your name will not be remembered for the crime committed against you. It will be remembered for the mission that rose from it. A movement built on accountability. A promise stretched across years, across distance, across heartbreak. The stars are beginning to appear overhead now. The same stars you once studied through that telescope in your childhood bedroom. The same stars that have shone for billions of years and will keep shining long after all of us are gone. But while I am still here, while I still have breath and purpose and a vow to uphold, I will make sure your light does not fade. Rest easy, my boy. Your father is still standing watch. If this story has meant something to you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support allows stories like this to be told. And if you would like to hear another story, select the video appearing on your screen now.